Hello everyone, Ferrariman601 here. This is a video that I hoped I would never have to make. I've thought for a few days about how exactly I want to make this, but I am making it because I'd like to start a discussion. And I'd like to start a discussion in a respectful and logical manner about, of course, what has happened to driver Jules Bianchi at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix last weekend. We all know the facts of the day. We know the facts about the accident. I'm not going to talk about them here. I'm not going to show you any grisly pictures of what happened. I'm not going to show you that video that was released, shot from the grandstands. If you want to see that, go find it by yourself. I'm not going to be the one who's drooling over somebody's worst day of their life, basically. What I want to do today is talk about why we're here. I want to talk about the evolution of safety in Formula One. I want to say good things about it. But I also want to make some constructive criticisms about the way that the sport is being managed today. And I want to talk about potentially what some underlying factors were in this accident and perhaps what we could do or what we should be doing as we look at what's going to change in the future. My overall sentiment this year is that Formula One has become gimmicky. The last time Formula One became gimmicky in the same sense was, in my opinion, in 1994. We all know what happened in 1994. Let's talk about 1994 for a second. Obviously, those of you who are fans and students of the sport's history will know that beginning in the late 80s and through the early part of the 90s, Formula One underwent a technical revolution in the area of electronics. So beginning in the late 80s, we had the introduction of semi-automatic gearboxes. That then became ubiquitous up and down the grid in a couple of years. Then we had the introduction of active suspension by Williams. In 1991 and 1992, they really were a tour de force in terms of active suspension. We had the introduction of other electronic driver aids like anti-lock braking, traction control, yaw control, all of that kind of thing. The criticism at the end of the 1993 season when Alain Prost won the World Championship in the Williams FW15C, which was effectively an airplane without wings, was that there was no emphasis on driver skill anymore and that the cars were basically driving themselves. Now, the Formula One rules makers saw this, and they decided for 1994 that they were going to ban all electronic driver aids. They were going to ban active suspension, and they were going to put the cars basically in a technical state resembling 1988, 1989. So, effectively what happened was you have all of the 1994 cars, which are evolutions of the 1993 cars, but without all of the components that they were designed to work with. And a few teams had a lot of trouble adapting to this, Williams in particular in the beginning of the season. And what happened to Williams? One of their cars crashes and their driver is killed. Obviously, we also had Roland Ratzenberger die that weekend at Imola. His accident was caused by front wing failure. And the deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna made tremendous contributions to the development of safety in Formula One. In particular, the development of passive safety measures. And of course, we see this today in better trackside barriers, better chassis design with anti-penetration panels in the cockpit, cockpit surrounds with the soft padding that surrounds the driver, better helmets, better visors, better procedures, the wheel tethers that keep the wheels from flying off the cars anymore. Tremendous safety advancements due to that dark day at Imola. Now, after 1994, Formula One entered a period of maturity again. 1995 through 2008 really saw the cars stay relatively stable in their design. And if you look at the cars visually between 1995 and 2008, you see a very linear progression in design. It looks very logical, it looks very normal, to be honest, in terms of the way the cars physically looked and the ways that they performed. They progressively got faster, and they progressively got safer, as I mentioned, and they just got more and more refined in that spirit of design. We had the engine change from the V10s to the V8s at the end of 2005, and that really didn't affect the performance of the cars as much as some had thought. Then in 2008, we saw the banning of electronic driver aids again. We saw the banning of traction control. And this really was not that big of a deal. The fundamental design of the cars was still intact. The cars could run with or without traction control anyway. It really just became more difficult for the driver to control wheel spin in the heavy traction zones at slow corners. This is something that most racing series, don't have anyway. They don't have traction control, so that's fine. However, in my opinion, the sport has become gimmicky again, just like it did in 1994. 2009 had a radical redesign of the cars in terms of aerodynamics in order to aid overtaking. It didn't work. Then in 2010, teams were experimenting quite rightly to find a competitive advantage with the F-duct system. And the drivers were finding more straight line speed. In 2011, this started the introduction of DRS, which is the slot gap on the rear wing which opens to cut drag on the straights and to make a trailing car faster and to basically create artificial overtaking opportunities. The introduction of DRS, yes, it saw more overtaking. However, in my opinion, DRS has caused the sport to be, I want to say that the sport has become sanitized, because overtakes are now, they're seen as these absolutely essential things that must happen, rather than products of driver skill and determination and that kind of thing. A driver doesn't have to spend 10 laps setting up a move anymore. He can just be a second behind the car in front, open up his rear wing, and get past. I mean, no, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than it used to. Also, these DRS zones are usually on the fastest straight, the longest straight, which then leads into a tight corner on a lot of tracks. So now we have a situation where we have cars going into a very slow corner at high speed, and they're all struggling to slow down in close quarters, and accidents happen, granted, and they always have in these situations. However, one thing that has really stricken me is the way that flag rules and safety cars are sort of being given lax treatment. This year in particular, again, because Formula One has gotten in its head that it's more important to put on a show than to care about the safety of drivers. Again, we saw this at the Japanese Grand Prix. It was plagued by rain, the typhoon was approaching. There was talk about maybe pushing the race start for earlier in the day. It wasn't done due to television reasons. I understand the contractual obligations that FOM have to send that signal out at a certain time to a given audience. I understand there's a lot of money involved with it, but it was getting dark, the rain was getting very heavy. If you want to do this race, do it in a way that makes sense and that we don't cause undue risk to drivers. At the Dunlop curve, after Adrian Sutil's accident, there were double-waved yellows. Did the drivers slow down enough? Is there a way to enforce it? Would they enforce it? I don't know. Also, in terms of the safety car, there were marshals on track. There was a bulldozer on the side of the track. The safety car was not called out. Why not? In previous years, I remember safety cars being called out for reasons much less severe than that. What truly struck me is, if you want to think back to this year's Belgian Grand Prix, is on the opening laps of the race, somebody's front wing was sitting in the middle of the circuit, right on the entrance to Blanchiment, which, as you know, is the fastest corner on the Spa circuit. I mean, if we don't want to count Eau Rouge and Radillon, we look at Blanchiment as the quintessential corner on the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And somebody's front wing was sitting right on the racing line. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, surely this must call out a safety car, because if somebody hits that front wing, it gets stuck underneath one of the front wheels, or it causes a tire to blow. I mean, we saw a big accident in 2001 at Blanchiment with Luciano Burti, and his Formula One career is over. He speared into the trackside barriers, and he suffered head injuries, nowhere near as severe as the one suffered by Jules Bianchi, unfortunately, last weekend. But we know what big accidents at Blanchiment look like, and they left somebody's front wing sitting on the racing line at the entrance to a 195-mile-per-hour corner. And that was just stunning. And again, I have to wonder what's going on. Is it really for the show? If it is for the show, I have to say that's not what I want to see on television. I don't want to see drivers put at undue risk. I want to see drivers showcase their talent. I want to see teams showcase their technical and engineering prowess. I don't want to see drivers have to dodge pieces of jagged carbon fiber as they turn into a 195-mile-per-hour corner. I don't want to see drivers have to control their cars slithering around on a wet track under penalty of running into a tractor in the rain. I don't know what is going on here. I know they were under pressure to finish this race, or at least get it to points distance, but to not put out the safety car when there is an accident like that and there are marshals on track, I don't understand. So I hope that this gives all of you food for thought, and I hope you respond in your own ways. Please be respectful. And all I can say is, Jules, we're with you, and we hope you recover. Thank you for watching.